Why is this December turning into one of the most historically cold starts to winter in decades? And what does this mean for 180 million Americans over the next 3 weeks? Right now, as I speak to you, meteorologists are tracking something unprecedented: multiple Arctic blasts that are rewriting winter weather records across the country. A polar vortex that was supposed to stay locked over the Arctic Circle is instead sending wave after wave of brutal cold southward, in ways we haven't seen this early in winter. Daily temperature records are falling like dominoes, minus 18 degrees in South Dakota, minus 10 in Iowa, with wind chills approaching minus 40 across the upper Midwest. I'm Michael Thompson, and today is Saturday, December 13th, 2025. In the next 24 minutes, I'll walk you through exactly why this pattern has taken such a dangerous turn and what it means for your community. This isn't just another cold snap. We're looking at a complete transformation of the winter weather pattern that affects nearly 2/3 of the United States. But here's what makes this different from any other winter forecast you'll hear today. At precisely 3 minutes, I'll break down the exact temperatures and snowfall potential for every major region across America using data that's been updated within the last 3 hours from emergency management officials. This isn't speculation about what might happen. These are the numbers that utility companies, transportation departments, and school districts are using right now. But first, let me explain why weather experts are calling this a triple whammy of Arctic air that could reshape the entire rest of December and potentially January. The pattern that's dominated the last 2 weeks has been absolutely relentless. Arctic air has been pouring into the central and eastern states nonstop. We're talking about what meteorologists call a super cold start to winter. Temperatures running 25 to 30 degrees below normal in some areas. Over 40 daily temperature records have already been broken or tied, and that's just in the first phase of what's coming. But here's where this story takes an unexpected turn that has forecasters genuinely concerned. AccuWeather meteorologists are now tracking not one, not two, but 3 more waves of Arctic air heading our way through mid-December and beyond. The next blast arrives this weekend and could bring the coldest temperatures of the season so far. Actual air temperatures near zero in Chicago, sub-zero readings across the upper Midwest. What makes this particularly dangerous is the speed at which these changes are happening. We're seeing 30-degree temperature drops in just 12 hours. Yesterday, some areas were in the 50s. By Sunday, those same places could see wind chills approaching minus 20 degrees. Now, let me explain the science behind why this is happening, because it affects when we can expect relief. The polar vortex, that massive circulation of cold air that normally stays over the North Pole, has been in what scientists call a weakened and stretched state since late November. When this happens, frigid air that should stay locked up in the Arctic gets displaced southward, creating these dramatic cold outbreaks. What's unusual is how persistent this pattern has become. Normally, we'd see one strong Arctic blast, then things would moderate. But this keeps coming in waves. The European weather model is showing this pattern continuing with brief warm-ups between Arctic shots, creating what experts call weather whiplash. What does this mean for families trying to plan holiday activities? What about the millions of Americans who rely on heating systems that haven't been tested with this kind of sustained cold? Don't miss what I'm about to reveal, because these regional forecasts will help you understand whether you're dealing with manageable cold or potentially dangerous conditions. The timing couldn't be more challenging. This Arctic pattern is intensifying just as we hit the peak holiday travel and shopping season. Energy companies are already reporting demand spikes typically seen in January, not mid-December, putting strain on heating systems across multiple states. School districts from the Dakotas to Pennsylvania are already modifying schedules, and that's before the next wave even arrives. But here's the critical regional breakdown you've been waiting for. Exactly what each part of America can expect over the next 10 days and beyond. Let me walk you through this systematically, because this Arctic pattern affects everyone differently, and knowing your specific outlook could make all the difference. Upper Midwest: Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, and the Dakotas. You're ground zero for the most extreme conditions. This weekend's Arctic blast will bring actual air temperatures of 15 to 25 below zero across much of Minnesota and northern Wisconsin, with wind chills approaching minus 40 degrees. Minneapolis could see wind chills hit minus 35 degrees Sunday morning. That's cold enough to cause frostbite in under 10 minutes of exposure. Des Moines, Iowa is looking at actual temperatures near zero with wind chills around minus 20 degrees, some of the coldest conditions this early in winter on record. But here's what really caught my attention. The Clipper snow systems that have been rolling through every few days are going to continue. These quick-moving systems typically bring 2 to 5 inches of snow, but they're adding up to create significant seasonal totals across the northern plains. Great Lakes region, Illinois, Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio face a complex winter weather setup. Chicago is expecting another Clipper snow system this weekend, followed by temperatures dropping to near zero Sunday night, with wind chills reaching minus 15 to minus 20 degrees. The real concern here is lake effect snow. As this Arctic air moves over the relatively warm Great Lakes, heavy snow bands will develop. Areas downwind of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario could see 6 to 12 inches of additional snow through early next week, with locally higher amounts possible. Detroit is looking at highs struggling to reach the teens Monday and Tuesday, about 20 degrees below normal for mid-December. Cleveland and Erie, Pennsylvania are particularly vulnerable to lake effect snow as intense cold air moves over Lake Erie. Northeast Corridor. From Washington, D.C. to Boston, you're dealing with the southern edge of this Arctic invasion. The Clipper system I mentioned will bring 3 to 6 inches of snow to the mid-Atlantic region this weekend, from the D.C. suburbs through central New Jersey. What makes this significant is that areas like D.C., Baltimore, and Philadelphia haven't seen much snow this season, so travel impacts could be more severe than the amount suggests. New York City is looking at 2 to 4 inches of snow, with the heaviest amounts expected across Long Island and southern Connecticut. Boston will see light snow amounts, 1 to 3 inches, but temperatures will plummet. Highs Monday may struggle to reach the upper 20s. Even areas that rarely deal with winter weather are feeling this Arctic reach. Atlanta could see temperatures drop from near 70 degrees Sunday to struggling to reach the mid-40s Monday, a 25-degree temperature swing in just 24 hours. Areas as far south as northern Florida are under freeze warnings, with record low temperatures possible Tuesday morning. Birmingham, Alabama, Nashville, Tennessee, and even parts of Mississippi could see record cold with temperatures in the upper 20s. Mountain West, Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana are seeing massive snowfall totals building. The mountainous regions are picking up feet of snow, which is excellent for ski resorts, but creating dangerous avalanche conditions in the backcountry. Denver and surrounding areas are experiencing this Clipper pattern, with frequent light to moderate snow events adding up to significant seasonal totals. Pacific Northwest. While the rest of the country freezes, you're dealing with the opposite extreme. Heavy rain and flooding concerns continue across Washington and Oregon as atmospheric rivers target the region with above-average precipitation. Now, there's something developing that I need to tell you about, and it's happening as I'm putting this forecast together. The second Arctic wave that's expected next week could actually be more intense than what we're dealing with this weekend. Long-range meteorologist Paul Pastelak at AccuWeather is describing this as potentially the coldest outbreak so far this winter. We're looking at the possibility of actual air temperatures reaching minus 30 degrees across parts of the northern plains, with wind chills approaching minus 50. That's life-threatening cold that can cause frostbite in under 5 minutes and create serious strain on infrastructure. But let me walk you through the detailed timeline of what's coming, because preparation windows are getting shorter. Tomorrow, Saturday the 14th, we'll see this Clipper system moving through the Midwest and into the Ohio Valley and Northeast. By Saturday evening, areas from eastern Kentucky through West Virginia, eastern Ohio, and southwestern Pennsylvania could see heavier snowfall developing. The heart of the Mid-Atlantic, D.C. through Maryland, southeastern Pennsylvania into New Jersey, will also see heavier accumulations. I expect Long Island and southern New England to be hit particularly hard by this system as we reach Sunday morning.
Southern Connecticut, southern Rhode Island, and southeastern Massachusetts could see what meteorologists call a mid-Atlantic special type snow system. This could drop 3 to 6 inches of snowfall at minimum. Pretty plowable, moderate snow amounts. Nothing crazy, but certainly significant. What's particularly noteworthy is that this hits areas that have been missing out on a lot of the snowfall so far this season. Sunday and Monday will be quite cold along the eastern states, but here's where the pattern gets interesting. This marks the beginning of when we'll see some milder air able to work its way in temporarily between these Arctic waves. Looking at Tuesday the 16th, we'll see clearly much milder conditions, not that massive trough in the east that we've been dealing with. This milder pattern lasts for most of the week until we reach about Thursday the 18th, when things get really interesting again. We'll see a strong low-pressure system develop between the Great Lakes and Hudson Bay, a pretty classic look for significant winter weather. This will bring pretty significant snowfall for the northern plains and upper Midwest, along with a very significant cold front setting up. Heavy showers and thunderstorms are going to be a possibility, especially for southern locations, but I wouldn't rule it out for parts of the Midwest and Great Lakes either. This is pretty mild, humid air out ahead of that cold front and really intense, cold, dry air behind it. That's usually a recipe for some really volatile weather. We'll be watching to see how high humidity and temperatures can get in these northern areas. You typically need dew points in the upper 50s or 60s at least for potential thunderstorms, so we'll watch it closely as we get closer. By Friday the 19th, this cold front rolls through the eastern states, and we get a secondary low developing over New England. This causes additional snowfall for the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, and we also see really intense cold air moving over those Great Lakes. So we end up with significant lake effect snowfall getting going as we reach into the weekend of December 21st and 22nd. Now here's something that might surprise you about this overall weather pattern and why it's so persistent. While we're experiencing this brutal cold, these periods are actually necessary for the Arctic to quote-unquote recharge its cold air supply. When Arctic air moves south like this, the polar regions actually warm up temporarily, allowing ice and snow to consolidate and build up more cold air. Think of it like a freezer that needs time to build up cold after you've opened the door. The Arctic works similarly. This is why we're seeing this wave pattern rather than one continuous blast. It's the atmosphere's way of balancing extreme conditions. Weather records going back to 1950 show that winters with early cold patterns like this often continue with periodic Arctic outbreaks through February. However, there are breaks between these waves where temperatures can actually swing well above normal, creating dramatic weather whiplash. The European model is showing exactly this pattern. Periods of extreme cold followed by brief warm-ups, then more cold. What makes this particularly challenging for families and infrastructure is the rapid transitions between these extremes. As we reach Saturday, December 21st, we rebound into a milder pattern again pretty quickly, which gets us to Tuesday the 23rd and Wednesday the 24th, Christmas Eve. It's important to note we're still seeing a descending jet stream into the east, so it will be normal to slightly below normal temperatures for most areas. Especially the northern half will stay cooler, but it's just not those severely below normal temperatures we've been dealing with recently. Christmas gets even colder along the eastern seaboard according to the European model, with a pretty significant winter storm setting up. Specifics don't really matter this far out, but it's a good sign to see these models continuing to show active and cold conditions at times. This potential Christmas storm would impact the Northeast with snowfall, maybe some mixed precipitation in the Mid-Atlantic. The GFS model shows somewhat different timing, but both models are indicating that winter weather remains active through the holiday period. Let me share some practical preparation guidance, because these rapid temperature changes require different strategies than typical winter weather. For this weekend's Arctic blast, make sure your heating system is ready. Energy demand is already spiking to January levels across multiple states. If you have an older heating system or inadequate insulation, this could become a serious problem very quickly with sustained cold like this. Check on elderly neighbors and family members now, before conditions deteriorate. Make sure they have adequate heating fuel and emergency supplies.
For vehicle preparation, make sure your battery is tested. Car batteries lose significant capacity in extreme cold, and we're talking about extreme cold. Keep emergency supplies in your car if you must travel: blankets, water, non-perishable food, and a fully charged phone with car charger. Protect your home's plumbing by letting faucets drip slightly and opening cabinet doors under sinks during the coldest periods. Never use outdoor heating equipment like grills or camp stoves inside. Carbon monoxide poisoning cases spike during extreme cold events. I've been talking to folks at Emergency Management, and they want everyone to understand that these aren't just inconvenient temperature drops. Wind chills approaching minus 40 degrees represent genuine threats to human safety, especially for anyone caught unprepared outdoors. Frostbite can occur in under 10 minutes at these temperatures, and hypothermia becomes a serious risk for anyone without adequate protection. Schools across the impact area are already implementing cold weather protocols, with some districts preparing for potential closure. Transportation departments are pre-positioning equipment and supplies, but the frequency of these Arctic waves is straining resources. Now let me address something positive about this challenging pattern, because there are some significant silver linings worth mentioning. This early season cold and snow is exactly what ski resorts across the Mountain West and Great Lakes regions need. Mountain regions are building excellent snowpack for the season, with some areas already reporting base depths that typically aren't seen until January. The frequent clipper systems are spreading snow coverage across a much wider area than usual, creating great conditions for winter recreation. For snow lovers and winter sports enthusiasts, this is shaping up to be one of the more active and traditional winter patterns in recent years. Even more importantly, this cold pattern typically doesn't persist straight through Christmas, and models are showing moderation for holiday travel. The GFS and European models both suggest a pattern change around December 20th that would bring more seasonal temperatures for Christmas week. This means that while we're dealing with extreme conditions now, holiday travel weather could actually be quite manageable. But don't let your guard down completely. January could see a return to very active Arctic air as the pattern resets for midwinter. The massive snow cover building across Canada right now will serve as a cold air factory for potential January and February outbreaks. When future Arctic air masses move over all that snow and ice, they'll become even colder before reaching us. This is actually a really positive sign for winter weather enthusiasts and anyone hoping for a traditional, old-fashioned winter. I've seen some folks in our weather community getting concerned that winter might be over after these brief warm-ups between cold waves. Let me be clear. These milder periods are completely normal and actually necessary for the Arctic to build up more cold air. You can't stay extremely cold for the entire winter season. Even in the coldest winters, there are always periodic breaks. When these warm-ups happen for us, the Arctic is actually quite mild, not really increasing the amount of ice and snow up there. It really needs to recharge that cold air, which happens via the ice and snow. It consolidates all of its cold air and gets ready to unleash it again. So it cannot stay like it's been for the first 12 days of December all the way through the end of February. That just doesn't happen. This is very standard and should be expected. It would be shocking if this pattern wasn't developing. Looking at the total precipitation patterns, we're seeing overall less activity in the east as the pattern becomes more variable. I'd say the most precipitation is obviously from the Ohio Valley through the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, but there's a huge gap in the central states. More of the deep southeast is also seeing reduced precipitation, while the west is picking up in potential activity. As we look at the precipitation anomalies, it's pretty clear. East is dry, west is wet. There's no way around it, really. That's the look for the Mid-Atlantic, Northeast, and Ohio Valley. We are getting closer to normal, though, as the pattern moderates. Looking at total snowfall patterns, we're seeing tons of snow for the mountainous west, with above-average activity and below-average temperatures. This clipper track pattern that we're seeing is going to slow down as we move into warmer periods. These clippers will move further north. They'll be impacting mostly Canada, which is actually building incredible snowpack. Look at all the snow accumulating up there. As Arctic blasts move over those areas with tons of snow, it's going to make things even colder for us when those air masses move through and reach us.
This is a really positive look for potential cold down the road. We're still seeing a lot of Great Lakes lake effect snowfall. Northeastern snowfall continues on these model runs, while the GFS model shows similarly huge totals in Canada and the mountainous west. The Clipper pattern does slow down on both models, but we still see the upper Midwest and northern Great Lakes cashing in on far northern snow systems. Looking at temperatures moving forward on the European model, we get this major Arctic blast for the weekend, Sunday the 14th. Those magenta colors represent 25 degrees or more below normal. That's massively cold compared to normal. There's no way around it. This is frigid air moving in this weekend, and it lasts a few days all the way through Tuesday for the eastern seaboard. It starts to moderate by Wednesday, where we return to near average conditions, but as we keep going, we get another quick burst of cold. Once that brief warm-up ends, we get another little quick burst of cold air that lasts for about 2 days, then we warm back up. Then we cool back down for Christmas Eve into Christmas, then warm back up, then cool back down. You kind of get the point. It's up and down on the European model. The GFS model shows we get this Arctic blast, then the next one tries to move in but is less successful. That southeastern ridge looks more dominant on the GFS than the European model. Not really letting cool downs move in until Christmas. Thankfully, we end up with a colder Christmas on both models, then we warm up, then it looks like Arctic air tries to move in again. The specifics don't really matter at 15 days out, but it's showing that despite warmer air masses, Arctic threats continue. Let me share some insights about what this pattern means for different types of winter weather enthusiasts and outdoor workers. For snow lovers, this is exactly the kind of pattern you hope for. Frequent systems, good snow-to-liquid ratios due to cold temperatures. The Clipper systems are producing that light, fluffy snow that's perfect for skiing and winter recreation, not the heavy, wet stuff. For people who work outdoors, construction workers, utility crews, first responders, this pattern requires serious preparation and modified schedules. The rapid temperature swings mean you need to be prepared for both extreme cold and relatively mild conditions within the same week. For families planning holiday activities, the key is flexibility. Have indoor alternatives ready during the most extreme periods. Christmas week looks much more favorable for travel and outdoor activities, so don't cancel everything. Just be prepared to adjust timing. For homeowners, this pattern puts extra stress on heating systems, plumbing, and roofing. Regular checks become more important than usual. Let me circle back to the immediate situation and give you the 5 most critical points to remember for the next 2 weeks. First, this weekend brings the most dangerous cold of the season so far. If you can limit outdoor exposure Sunday and Monday, please do so. Wind chills approaching minus 40 degrees in some areas represent a genuine threat to anyone caught unprepared. Second, prepare for multiple rounds of this pattern. This isn't a one-time event. It's a recurring pattern through mid-December and likely beyond. Make sure your cold weather preparations can handle sustained periods of extreme conditions, not just brief cold snaps. Third, while this December is shaping up to be historically cold, relief does appear likely for Christmas week travel. The pattern shows signs of moderating around December 20th, which should make holiday gatherings and travel much more manageable. Fourth, don't panic during the brief warm-ups between Arctic waves. These are normal and necessary for the pattern to continue. These warm periods actually help the Arctic recharge for future cold outbreaks, so they're part of the overall winter pattern. Fifth, January could bring a return to very active winter weather as massive snow cover builds across Canada. This snow and ice will serve as a cold air factory for potentially even more intense Arctic outbreaks after the new year. This has been Michael Thompson with your comprehensive Arctic Blast briefing. Stay warm, stay prepared, and remember, this is what winter is supposed to look like. While Mother Nature is certainly testing our resilience this December, she's also giving us the kind of traditional winter that many regions haven't experienced in recent years. The frequent snow, the bitter cold, the active weather patterns, this is exactly what winters looked like decades ago in many parts of the country. I'll be tracking every development in this pattern and providing updates as these Arctic waves continue to develop and evolve.
In my next forecast, I'll reveal the stunning pattern change that could make late December 2025 a tale of two completely different weather extremes. Plus, I'll dive deep into what this early winter pattern tells us about January and February and why this could be one of the most memorable winters in recent history. Until then, take care of yourselves and your neighbors. We'll all get through this Arctic challenge together.